Enrichment, Enlightenment, Transformation. Rabbi Yisroel Cutler, the spiritual leader of Chabad of Cary, North Carolina, guides anyone who has been searching for a meaningful life and conscious living. Join our discussions about the mundane, our daily activities, and then infuse every day with a spiritual twist from the inspired sages of the Talmud and Jewish mysticism, which many call Kabbalah. We learn from the root source of all religious monotheistic traditions and delve into the symbolism and levels of meaning from biblical stories.
And you can be featured as part of the program today. We're doing the Parsha of Emor. Today is May 17th, 2016. So there's this young fellow who goes to the doctor, and he's 18 years old, and he walks in and he says, unfortunately, I have a history of heart problems in my family. My father passed away relatively young. What can I do about it? Because I want to live much longer. And the doctor takes a look at him, speaks to him a little bit, and says, my solution to you would be get married. Get married. Get married, and that'll be my secret to a long life. He goes, no, get married, and after 1 week, you won't want a long life. All right. Just to start off on that note. Last week, we spoke about the commandment of honoring parents. And we spoke why it is that the Torah places it on the left tablet, not the right tablet. We also spoke about why it is that the Torah asks us to both love and honor, but also revere and have awe towards our parents. So we're going to do a very similar theme today, but not with parents. Marriage, community, friends. We're going to talk about two different emotions. And while one of them is often highlighted in society, the other one is not there as much. And I feel very strongly about this issue because I think it's very misunderstood. People don't understand what the importance of this emotion. But the class begins with marriage, and from there, it's going to talk about regular relationships and friendships, community, and the world at large. Is it a little cold in here? Everyone's okay? So it's funny how there are a lot of books that are attributed to King Solomon in the Tanakh and the 24 books of the Bible. So in one place, King Solomon writes in Proverbs, something very different than our young man in the joke. Hal, text 1a from Proverbs.
He who has found a wife has found good and has obtained favor from God.
Okay, best thing since sliced bread, that's when you find good in life. When you get married. The same King Solomon is a little bit more cynical about marriage. In another one of his books that he authors, in Kohelet.
It doesn't say marriage in there.
Oh, a wife. A wife.
Oh, wife.
Matzah
okay.
Isha, one who finds a wife.
Just not
And
enough
look-
there is.
And look what he writes in Kohelet, in another book. Cal, why don't you do 1b?
My mouth is full.
I know. That's why,
And I find more bitter than death, the woman whose heart is snares and nets. Her hands are bound. Whoever is good in God's sight will escape from her, and a sinner will be taken.
Woo! Wow. Yeah. That's not one of the verses you read in a Sunday school, is it? That's a tough verse over there. So apparently context is everything. So what's interesting is both of these verses in the Hebrew start off almost the same. One who has found a woman, a wife. And look at the beginning of text 1a, it's matzah. And look how the next verse begins in the Hebrew, motzi. It's the same root word. So on that note, look what they used to say to the young man getting married in the land of Israel, text 2. This is interesting. In text 2, the young man's getting married, and they would ask him, what's this going to be? Which one of King Solomon's verses is this going to be? Is this going to be the one in Mishlei, or is this going to be the one in Kohelet? So Bert, text 2.
Excuse me. In the West, the land of Israel, when a man would marry a woman, they would say to him this, matzah or matzah,
Is this going to be the matzah, which was one, again, or motzi, yeah.
found or find. Found refers to the verse, who has found a wife has found good and has obtained favor from the Lord. Find refers to the verse, and I find more bitter than death, the woman.
Whenever in the Talmud it says the West, you know what the West means. Where was the Talmud written?
In Babylonia.
Babylonia. So they were in the Talmud, when it says in the West, it doesn't mean the Wild West. It means the Jews are living in the West, and Israel is geographically to the west of Babylonia and Iraq and Iran. So the Talmud writes, in the West, they used to call over the young man, and they say, young man, is it going to be motzi or matzah for you? You know, as if there's no in between.
Interesting. In the West would also be din, judgment.
Well, we're gonna talk a little bit about din and judgment, or gevura today. Along, doesn't have to be judgment, but gevura, let's say.
Rabbi?
Yes.
But wouldn't most people be a little of both? Or hopefully not too much of the bad, but.
Yeah, I guess
little
what
bit?
they were. Why would they say such a thing? Obviously, there's parts of both in marriage. Perhaps they were telling the young guy it can really go either way, and that is very much dependent upon you. And we're going to discuss today some of Torah's values about marriage. That's just the segue into the main discussion, which is interpersonal relationships with anyone. But it's interesting that they made it so black and white. And a lot of times you paint things black and white because someone's at the just beginning their journey, and you're trying to tell them a lot depends on you right now. It could be like this or like that. Yes, it's probably going to be somewhere in the middle, and there are going to be days like this and days like that, but they painted it in stark terms.
Does it not distinguish between two kinds of women?
Maybe, I mean, in the verses, I would have to look at the whole context. We're not going to go there today. That's not the purpose. We're talking about two regular people here, and it can go one of both ways. You're right. In the second verse, it seems to put the blame on the woman here, right? King Solomon.
Well,
The
you
death
could pick
whose
one
heart
kind
is
of woman,
snares
or you
and
could pick
nets.
Another woman.
Yeah, but it could be the man also. More likely, it could be the man. And in fact, so Maimonides, when he talks about the laws of marriage, uses two words. And you'll see in text number 3, and this is now jumping to the 1100s, he uses two different words when discussing a relationship between husband and wife. Text 3, Janice.
Our sages commanded that a man honor his wife more than his own person and love her as he loves his own person. If he has financial resources, he should offer her benefits in accordance with his resources. And similarly, they commanded a woman to honor her husband exceedingly.
Okay, but it doesn't say more. It only says for the man more than yourself. Notice that. The man needed more, Maimonides writes. But what I want to notice he discusses two different verbs. He uses the words honor or respect. The Hebrew is the same. The word for that is kavod. Kavod means honor or respect. And then afterwards, love her as much as himself. Interesting, when it comes to kavod, doesn't say as much as yourself. What does it say? More than yourself. And every word in Maimonides is very specific. So when it comes to kavod, Maimonides puts kavod before love. And B, when it comes to kavod, he writes even more than oneself when it comes to love as much as oneself. What is more important in a relationship, love or respect?
I think love.
Okay, let's.
Excuse me, that's my feeling.
What do you think is more, and obviously we're going to need some definitions. What does love mean? What does respect mean? And a lot of the answer has to do with the definitions we give.
My father used to say, if you don't respect the woman, there is no point in falling in love with that woman because the love will diminish without the respect.
Nice. Interesting. Wise words. Any other thoughts? Love, respect? What is the difference? We're going to get into a definition later on today. What would be your definition, the difference in the way you look at love and respect? And again, if anyone is listening and online, feel free to chime in. Yeah, Judy.
I think of love as an emotion, whereas respect is your actions.
Okay.
Right, I was just gonna say.
That's a
That's
good-
exactly what I was just gonna say.
Okay.
Yes.
What about, and I, yeah, good. What if we treated them, I want to try to treat them equally as both emotions here. Okay? That way we can compare apples to apples instead of apples to oranges. Love is, it's easy to say, Judy, what you said is true, that love is going to be the emotions and the way we act is respect. I want to treat both as emotions. There's an emotion of loving someone, and there's an emotion of respecting someone. Okay?
An emotion.
An emotion. I want to compare apples to apples. The emotion of love versus the emotion of respect. Not the action of one versus the emotion of the other, because that would be difficult to compare. How would you describe the difference in the emotion of love and the emotion of respect?
Oh, wow. Oh, wow, because the emotion of respect usually comes from observation, you come to a conclusion, it's more intellect.
Yeah, I would take it as intellect, not emotion,
Not
respect.
Okay. Okay. But we can say intellect emotion. What I mean is I don't want one to be in action and one to be in the head. I want to compare both to be in the head or heart. So you're saying the love is more an outpouring of the heart,
Yeah.
and the respect is more an intellectual.
Yes,
Mhm.
I think so.
And yet both are choices that you make intellectually. To treat people with respect is a choice that you make, and to love a person actually is a choice that you make,
Anyone else on the difference in the emotions
usually.
or the feelings? Anyone else?
I think respect, there's more, it's almost calculated.
Okay.
You look at the good and the bad
Mhm.
and you come up with a decision, whereas love kind of just happens.
Okay, good. Love happens. You don't fall into respect. You fall into love, right? That's good. So you don't respect is something you need to come to.
Yes.
Now, that alone though is telling you something. That tells you it might be harder. It might tell you it's deeper. Because things that are very natural, often it can have good to it and it can have bad to it because you didn't work on it. Right? Things that you work on are often more lasting, more meaningful. Right? If you
Well, respect you, it's also how you actually treat the person, which is
Yes.
Correct.
You can love somebody,
Mhm.
but if you don't respect them by, again, your actions and how they actually treat them, it's actually two different things.
And if that is so, if you have love without respect, we can begin to question
For depth.
what the depth of that kind of
Yes.
love, right?
Exactly.
If there is love without respect, what kind of love is it then?
It'll
'Cause-
disappear.
They have
A will disappear. Good. If there's love without respect, A will disappear. And anything that is disappearing shows that even right now, it isn't that deep. So what is it dependent on right now? The fact that it disappears later on shows that it's what? What is it motivated by now?
Selfish.
I know we're getting very psychological today.
The self.
There's going to be right.
Self.
Yes.
Rabbi, first of all, I just want to tell you that Anne and Debbie are in the chat.
Beautiful.
And Debbie is saying, love is an inner feeling. Respect is how you treat others.
Right.
And how are love and respect related emotionally? Respect comes from admiration. If it is unconditional love, then comes no matter what is said or done by the other.
Beautiful.
Love is the larger umbrella that covers underlying emotions.
Beautiful. All beautiful points. Thank you, Debbie. And I'm happy both of you are listening in. So that's great. So your words may be held against you, everyone. It's being listened now. Okay, so we're going to put the marriage on the side for a moment and go to section 2 on page 43. It is well known, I'm going to paraphrase this, that the 49 days between Passover and Shavuos are important days. They are important days because when the Jews left Israel, they were told that they would be receiving the Torah in 49 days. And it was important as well because when they left Egypt, they weren't necessarily deserving. God schlepped them out and they had to work on character improvement during these 49 days until we get the giving of the Torah. And there is a mitzvah, in fact, Let's do text 6. Where are we up to, Judy, right?
Yep.
Text 6.
It is a positive commandment of the Torah for each Jewish person to count 7 weeks from the day that the Omer offering is.
In biblical times, there was a certain offering brought right after Passover. And as soon as that offering was brought, from that night and on, they would count. So from that day on, we count 7 weeks. Keep on going.
The sages expounded on the words, "You shall count for yourself." Perhaps this means that the count is to be performed only by the Beit Din,
I'll explain this in a moment.
like the Yovel, for which the Beit Din counts 7 7-year cycles and then sanctifies the 50th year for the Yovel. Therefore, the Torah teaches, "And you shall count for yourselves," in the plural, so that each and every person should count.
Sometimes the Torah discusses counting, and it doesn't mean every person has to count. It means the government, the court system had to count. For instance, every 7 years was a sabbatical year in biblical Israel. After 7 cycles of a sabbatical year, every 50th year was a Jubilee year. We're not discussing that today. It had many laws. Do you know that real estate went back in the Jubilee year in biblical Israel? You never really owned land. The most you had was a 50-year lease on it. But it wasn't that, that's for actually next week's Parsha discusses that. Very fascinating, and why that might be so. But what's important here is that wasn't a personal count. That was a count that the government did. When it comes to this counting, it says you should count for yourself. Each person is supposed to count the 50 days between Passover and Shavuot. And with that in mind, we all really, together right now, should say or at the end of class, should do the mitzvah and say what day number today is. Today is number 24. You know, Judy, very good. And because in one place the Torah says you should count 7 weeks, and in another place the Torah says you should count 50 days, guess what we do? We count both. No, we count both. We say today is 24 days, which is 3 weeks and 3 days. Okay. And more than that, because it says count for yourself, that's also the mystical meaning that it's not just supposed to be counting, but you're supposed to be improving yourself during the 49 days. And one last interesting teaching, because it says count for yourself, the holiday of Shavuot, which is at the end of 50 days, right? That is the day we got the Torah. It's the only holiday in the Jewish calendar where the Torah doesn't give a date for it. The Torah doesn't say the holiday of Shavuot is on this date. Rather, it says it's 50 days from when you start counting your Passover. Now, you could say that there's no difference. There is a difference. What is that, Hal? You know what I'm going to say. You've been here long enough. What is the difference whether the Torah says Shavuot is on this date or the Torah says Shavuot is 50 days from your Passover?
Because it's man is deciding the date
Correct.
versus God.
Okay, so one is we are deciding the date, and especially in the days when months had different number of days, there wasn't a set day for Shavuot. It would be 50 days. But even today, there's a practical difference, and that is if someone travels to Australia right now. If someone travels to China or Australia right now, a religious Jew or any Jew that observes the holiday of Shavuot, they will observe Shavuot on a different day than everyone else around them. Why? No, more than the actual time change alone doesn't affect it. What does change it? They cross the international date line. And when someone crosses the international date line, you ever fly to Australia? You leave on one Monday. When do you get there?
That Monday.
On the way back, it's
Yes.
Monday to Monday. On the way there, it's Monday to Wednesday because it takes about 18 hours to get there. And when you cross international date line, you zoom one whole 24-hour day forward.
Right, so you can go back and forth on a day, but who
If you go
determines
back
that?
and forth, then that's not a problem because you've completed your days. But if all you do is travel to Australia within these days, and then you want to observe the holiday in Australia, you will observe the holiday on a different day than everyone else.
49 days maybe instead of 50.
Well, you'll observe your 50th day, but your 50th day will be different than everyone else. Is this confusing?
No.
In my
Who
mind.
determines?
When you go to Australia, you lose a day. There's 24
Yeah.
hours that don't exist. You know that? That's what happens. When you cross the international date line, you completely travel in time, 24 hours. Your Tuesday doesn't exist. So,
So
as
if
a
you go
result,
often enough, you can like be a year younger, right?
well, no, because you'd have to go back in order to go often enough. And each time you go back, guess what happens?
2 days.
You come
Yeah,
back and
you
you get back on track.
If you go this way.
Oh, yeah, but you'll spend your whole life in there.
Who determined where the international date was?
So that is a good question. You know what? We need a whole class on the international day line, and that will.
But it's not from. It was
So the question is,
determined
how does
Jewishly?
Torah? Is it an arbitrary thing? So why? Let's save that for. It's a good question. In any event, that was parenthetical. What we've discussed now is there's 49 days between the holiday of Passover and Shavuot, and their days of preparing for the Torah, and their days we count. And it was only much later in history that there was a dark side to the Omer. And I discussed this on Shabbat a few weeks ago. What is the dark side to this period? The dark side to this period is that much later in history, there was a huge epidemic, a huge plague that happened in Jewish history. About in the year, Rabbi Akiva lived about in the year 100 of the Common Era, about 2,000 years ago.
So it was after the destruction of the temple?
It was after the destruction of the temple, when Israel was still being ruled by the Romans. And the main sage of the time, whose name was Rabbi Akiva, we can't imagine, there were 24,000 students in his yeshiva, in his rabbinical college. And every single one died of this plague that the Talmud identifies as Askara. People say it's like the croup. I think that. Let's see what I got over here. What's DIPHT?
Diphtheria.
What is diphtheria?
Oh, that used to be, we used to have to inoculate the children.
So what is
We still
diphtheria?
do.
We still do inoculate them?
Yes, we inoculate.
Intestinal?
It's breathing related, isn't it? Respiratory?
Yeah, I think with the.
As infants. Yeah.
Okay. So the Talmud writes they died of this plague, and I should note I've seen modern scholars recently say that maybe the Talmud wrote it that way, but it was a code word for something else. Again, the Talmud was written when the Jews were under Roman rule. Could it have been that they were actually killed by the Romans in the Bar Kokhba rebellion, which happened at that same time? That was a theory someone put forth, that when the Jews rebelled, the whole Masada, that they were killed then. But at least traditionally, the Talmud identifies it as a plague that hit them. And you might say, why, there were many tragedies throughout history. What made this so, this is horrific, but we've had many horrific tragedies throughout history. Why did this plague become part of Jewish law? What do I mean it became part of Jewish law? So on page 40, text 9 on page 46, Barbara?
It customary?
It should say it is customary.
It is customary to not get married or get a haircut between Pesach and Shavuot, more specifically, until Lag BaOmer. Since Rabbi Akiva's students died in that time.
You will not find a traditional Jewish wedding held in May many years. And it's always the time that everyone wants to get married. And you're right?
Yep.
So you get the calls and you can't do it. You have to wait. It's the Omer. It's the Omer. And the question is, so there was a horrible plague and 24,000 students died. And the next couple quotes we're going to skip. There's a discussion in the Talmud which days they actually died. There's a tradition that for 33 days there was this plague was going through, and then the plague stopped. So different people observe 33 days on different days. But the point is that up until today, there's mourning, a minor mourning that happens during this time, and Jewish weddings are not held. One of the reasons is because that represented that the temple was already destroyed. The Jews had lost their political independence. They were under Roman rule. The one thing they still had left was the teachings of Torah. Well, when Rabbi Akiva's 24,000 students died of the plague, this threatened continuity of Judaism. This was the link to the next generation. Especially those days, there were no books. Everything was all oral tradition. And it was not until Rabbi Akiva found 5 more students that he managed to teach them, and from those 5, Judaism was renewed. One of those 5 is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who we make a big deal about on Lag BaOmer. But that gives us some context. Why would it be that they made such a big deal in Jewish law that up until today people don't get married? Because it really was a national calamity. And we've had many of those, but this threatened the very...
So I'm really single.
Gee.
No. When did you get married? How? When's your anniversary?
May 28th.
Well, I don't know when it was that year.
I looked it up.
When was
I'm
it?
Still single.
When was it? What day of the Omer? Was it before Lag BaOmer or after Lag BaOmer?
That I don't know.
Because many people do get married. Remember I told you there was a discussion, which 33 days do we not do it? So many people from Lag BaOmer and on will actually get married. So May 28th is often after Lag BaOmer.
What was the year?
1978.
So you need a Jewish calendar.
All we need is.
When's your Jewish, in any event, let's go further.
So if
So-
I come up with that, I
No.
answer it?
Don't say you heard in the right. No. That's not going to pass. In any event, usually we don't question tragedies. In Jewish tradition, we don't say this happened because of that. We don't say Hurricane Katrina happened because, we don't know why things happen. But when it comes to this plague, it's one of the few times that the Talmud writes. Let me see which text it is because I skipped. Text 8. Do you mind reading? Where are we up to in the reading?
I read. So
Okay, text 8. It is said.
Yes. It was said that Rabbi Akiva had 12,000 pairs of disciples from Gabasa to Antipora.
My geography of Babylonia is not good. I don't know where those places are. Maybe someone can help me out.
And
Yeah.
all of them died at the same time because they did not treat each other with
Whoa, so they
respect.
had a tradition. This is rare. We usually don't give reasons for why things happen. What was the spiritual cause of the plague? They didn't treat each other with respect.
With respect.
Lo nahagu kavod ze lazeh. They didn't have kavod to one another. Okay. And the question that is asked in many places is that their teacher, Rabbi Akiva, was one of the greatest teachers in all of Judaism. So many times he is quoted in the Talmud. What he is perhaps best known for is text 11, Hal. Text 11,
Rabbi.
page 49.
Rabbi Akiva said, and you shall love your fellow as yourself. This is a great principle of Torah.
All right, so it wasn't Rabbi Akiva who said you should love your fellow as yourself. Where does that come from? Where's that from? The Bible. That comes from the Torah. What did Rabbi Akiva say about the verse? This is the principle of the entire Torah. You want to know what the foundation of the whole Torah is? Loving another like yourself. The rest is commentary. So what's the question? How could it be that a teacher who preached love another like yourself would have 24,000 students who got it so wrong? That's the question.
How does Hillel get so much credit for this when this is before Hillel?
Yes, his was exciting. There was a whole story. There was a convert that came up to him, and the
Okay.
convert said, "Teach me the Torah on 1 foot." And he said, "Don't do something to your friend that you wouldn't want to be done to yourself." That's the entire Torah. The rest is commentary.
So am I single or married? I figured
It's still loading.
It was at night, I presume.
Yes.
It was at night,
Okay. So
1978.
So
do we
here
still
it says,
so that's the question. Rabbi Akiva himself said, "V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha zeh klal gadol b'Torah." Love another like yourself. This is the whole Torah. And
And
yet,
not respect.
so there are many people who are puzzled by this question. I'm cold. I'm gonna shut off the air. Many people are puzzled by this question. How could it be that a teacher who we would presume had an enormous amount of influence on his students would have all of his students get it so wrong? Now, what is the easiest answer? Anyone want to come up with the easy answer?
The next paragraph says Akiva has abandoned his pious.
Oh, well, that was actually, we're going to skip that text. That text is saying that he was known for being generous. So the Talmud says, how could Rabbi Akiva say this? Wasn't he one who always was generous? So that's a text that furthers the question. In the Talmud, he is known to be someone that always has love for another. The simple question, one answer, Barbara, would be, when did Rabbi Akiva start preaching this? After all the students passed away. Meaning that would be one answer. Yeah, you know why he preached this as the entire Torah? After he saw what happened,
Oh,
he began.
It was-
The Rebbe didn't like that. That would be one answer that was given. The Rebbe didn't like that because the Rebbe felt that when that incident happened at the very end of his life, and it seems from the Talmud and other places that he was always teaching, love another like yourself.
Oh.
So,
Well, can I ask a
yeah,
question?
sure.
It says you shall love your fellow as yourself, but it doesn't also say love and respect.
Correct. So that is going to be where we're going here. And that was the contribution. The Rebbe's answer here was they had love and a lot of love, but they missed respect. And that's where they went off. And let's now go to section number 3. Let's go to section number 3.
Section 3.
Page 50. Here's a great story. You may have heard it before. Why don't you read it, Bert, out loud? Text 13. It's a Jewish folk tale.
I need some water for this.
Okay.
Okay. There was a Jewish folk tale that illustrates how vague the meaning of the word love can be, and also demonstrates some of the basic problems in statements such as, I love you. Once upon a time, a fisherman caught a large pike, and when he pulled the fish out of the water, he saw its size, and he said, this is wonderful. I'll take it to the baron. He loves pike. The poor fish says to himself, there's some hope for me yet. The fisherman brings the fish to the manor house, and the guard says, what do you have? A pike? Great, says the guard. The baron loves pike. The fish feels that there is some corroboration of the facts. The fisherman enters the palace, and though the fish can hardly breathe, he still has hope. The baron loves pike. The fish is placed on a table, and the baron himself enters and gives instructions. Cut off the tail, cut off the head, and slit it this way. With his last breath, the fish cries out in great despair, why did you lie? You don't love pike, you love yourself.
So this was a folk tale Jews used to give. And the meaning is, when we say love, we hope it means I'm devoted to you. I'm connected to you. We hope it does not mean what? You bring me something that I like. But love can be different things to different people. It can be a sophisticated love. It reminds me of the guy who is on a date. This egotistical guy, and he's on a date, and he's just going on and on about himself for 2 hours. I did this, and I did that, and finally after 2 hours, he says, you know what, I feel bad. I spoke so much about myself. It's time for you. What do you think about me?
Sounds like somebody running for president.
Yeah. Exactly. So you got a date for Hal?
Yep, it's after Lag BaOmer, year 21.
Congratulations, Mazel Tov.
You notice it was a married woman that checked that out.
Yeah. So love can mean a lot of things. And there can be a deep love and there can be a selfish love. A selfish love means what you give me. So even when you talk to, especially young people getting married, I love her, why? She makes me happy. And that's beautiful. I'm not saying that shouldn't be so. She shouldn't make you happy. But if that is the foundation of the love, then the love is dependent on her making you happy. Or even I feel good when I'm around her. That's beautiful. That's great. But if it's only that, then you love what she, or it can be the other way around, I'm speaking as a man, you love what they give you. Real love, we know, means what? What is real love?
7-layer cake.
What is real love?
Better when you love another more than yourself.
So it's not about yourself, you love. And in order to have real love, there needs to be respect. And here's where Hasidus, Jewish Kabbalah and Jewish psychology, I would say, says the difference. Okay, and this is important. Love means what you'll do for someone. True love, I'll do this for you. Respect means what you don't do because of someone.
Can you repeat that?
Love would mean I do this because of you. I respect you and therefore I don't do this because of you. Love is a feeling of, Kabbalistically, attraction, getting closer, wanting to be one with. Respect and again, respect has many meanings in the dictionary. I'm using one narrow definition in Kabbalah. Is more not the trait of chesed getting closer. What is it the trait of? What's the opposite of chesed? Gevura, distance. What do I mean distance? I'm not trying to change you. I love you the way you are. Okay?
Acceptance.
Acceptance of the way you are.
Yes.
Exactly. I respect you as a person that is different than me, that has their own needs than me. I'm not trying to change you to be like me. Okay? So while chesed gets closer, chesed is the love, this definition of respect is not minding if someone else is different. That's okay. And I can respect you as a person, every part of you, not just the part of you that I see myself in. Okay? And that's a little that's deep. That's deep. So that's why
And all Jewish wives are taught this
So in-
before.
What?
All Jewish wives are taught this before they get married.
hope old Jewish men, if you listened, Maimonides writes it more to the men than the women. You know that. He says the men need this even more. Not trying
I
to
agree.
change the person, right? But accepting them who they are. And when there is that acceptance and respect, then what can flourish? Love. But what kind of love will it be? Genuine love, real love. And that's hard. It's hard not to want to change somebody. It's hard not to want to change someone to be their version of who I want. No, I have my version of who I want you to be, right? Now, I want to accept their version of who they are to be, and that is why there's a beautiful Jewish tradition, of course. Under the wedding, what do? The bride is veiled. Where does that come from, that the bride is veiled in Jewish tradition? Anyone know?
Something hiding.
Where does that tradition come from?
From Yaakov having.
So there's a biblical story where Jacob gets fooled and he thinks he's marrying one woman and he ends up marrying somebody else. He thinks he's marrying Rachel and his future father-in-law tricks him and gives him the wrong woman. And because biblical story.
Was that the first veil, though?
I don't know. But it says in order to remember that, we have the veil. Now my question to you would be, God Almighty, this should be a reason that
You don't.
we don't have the veil, right?
That's also.
But that's also why at the end, he takes off the veil, right?
And Moses has a veil.
He has a veil also. So I'm sure there's deeper meanings. But the psychological reason for this is when you're under the chuppah, you've dated for whether it's the Hasidic 3 months or whether it's 3 years or whether it's 10 years. You've seen one side of the person and you love that side of the person. But are you prepared to marry the entire person, even the person who you don't know that is mysterious? And under the chuppah, when you say, I am connected to you, you're saying, I'm marrying all of you, even the part of you that I don't know. We all have the Rachel and the Leah. So you're attracted to the Rachel, the one that you naturally are attracted to. But then there's the respect for the Leah. There's the respect for the other side of the person.
This is also Shakespeare.
Rabbi,
Okay? Yes.
Debbie is asking, she said, how can you love someone the way they are if they are not behaving like a person?
Mm.
How can you respect someone if they don't respect you in return? There is an incident at Harvard where a Muslim law student asked the Israeli minister why she's smelly as an effort and indication of anti-Semitism. How does this engender respect?
Sure. So this is a tough one. How can you love someone that is clearly doing something wrong? So here's where it's difficult. That is where you differentiate between what?
Love and respect.
And right, that's one. And B is you don't agree with the action, meaning you can very much disagree. I think this actually is going to connect to what we're getting to in a moment. You can disagree with some of the actions. You can have opinions and say this is wrong, and you still can believe that deep down the person can be a good person who right now is doing some not great things,
Yeah.
right? You are allowing yourself to see they have a soul, they have a pure soul, and I love the godly soul inside of them. Unfortunately, that's being covered right now by a lot of schmutz, a lot of schmutz.
God.
And what that allows you to do is not identify them only by the schmutz. But I'm not suggesting over here that we are to dismiss the flaws in people or any of that. That's not what we're talking about here. But going back to Rabbi Akiva's students, and I think this connects a little bit to what you were saying, they loved each other deeply. Not only that, what did their teacher preach? Love each other like yourself. So they were students of this teacher, and guess what? Even back then, 2 Jews, 3 opinions. Some things haven't changed. They each heard the Torah of their teacher. They each heard the speech of their teacher. Class was over. What do you think they did? They debated what Rabbi Akiva meant. They debated all sorts of issues in Torah and in Judaism and life and philosophy, in outlook. They cared about each other so much, it bothered them deeply that someone else had an opinion that was wrong in their mind. Look at the way the Rebbe writes it, text 15. Hal, we skipped you.
It was precisely because they were students of Rabbi Akiva that they did not respect one another. Every one of Rabbi Akiva's students was so completely devoted to their rabbi that they could not tolerate that someone else had, in their view, misinterpreted his teachings.
How could they? I love him so much. How could they have it wrong? I care about you so much. You gotta be a carbon copy of me, right? If I didn't care about you, if I didn't love you, you live my life. That's okay. But I love you so much. I gotta love you like myself. I gotta make sure you see things my way. Now, obviously, that is a flawed interpretation of what it means to love another like yourself, because they missed respecting the other person for who they are. And that doesn't mean you can't disagree with someone. No, we can have it differently. That's okay. That's okay. And it doesn't even mean that we can't have conversations where we debate and we see things differently. But I can still have respect for you and your opinion, even though I see things passionately different. And I don't have to get rid of my passion and my opinions. Continue. So this conduct was intensified. Keep on reading.
This conduct was intensified precisely as a consequence of Rabbi Akiva's fundamental teaching that loving your fellow as yourself is a great principle of Torah. Without this teaching, it's possible that they would not have been particularly bothered by another student, not fully understanding the teacher's view. However, since Rabbi Akiva taught them about the importance of the mitzvah of
loving like yourself,
they were not content with diligently applying themselves to study his teachings. Rather, each one of them tried to influence their fellows, and especially the students of their rabbi, to ensure that they also understood what they felt was their teacher's true intention, and could not respect those who did not accept it.
It's a powerful idea. It's a very, very powerful idea in our own lives, in our relationships, in our marriage, in our community, and in the world. It's totally okay to have different opinions. I feel like we live in a world today where, I'm going to take this a little more global, there are almost two extremes. One extreme is, unfortunately, there are people that have very strong opinions that are hurtful and hateful to other people. And the other extreme is, you're not allowed to have opinions, because if you have certain opinions about something, that means you must be hateful. And no, that's not true. You can have deep opinions about something and still deeply respect every single person for being a child of God, a creation of God. But there can be a balance here, and I feel that's so lacking in the world today, where as soon as you don't agree with someone else's opinion, what do? You have to dismiss them as a person. It's easy to talk about politics, right? Or if you don't agree, then, one side, you're not a good American. No, they're good Americans. What's wrong with seeing things differently and having an honest difference of opinion? And perhaps both of them are even good values. We just argue on which value trumps, I didn't mean trumps, what?
Yeah.
And that's the way it and on most issues, and I don't know, on most issues, can people around the room see both sides? On most issues,
Of course.
it's tough. We should try to be able to do that, and that doesn't mean we can't be passionate about something, but we allow ourselves to see where people are coming from. Therefore, we can respect them as a person, and we can have our own very passionate beliefs while still respecting the other person as a person. And I feel that that's very much missing in the world today in one of the other two extremes. Thoughts, questions, comments? We won't get too political here, but what other? Yes.
There is another comment from Debbie here before you wind it up. She says, it's much easier with your child to accept the horrible actions and still love the child. But with adults who should know better than covered with schmutz, they should clean up their act. You are speaking of Rabbi Akiba students and proteges as part of the Jewish family. Their connectedness to Torah and the one people. This is different than others who are not connected. It is worthy to love all people, no matter what they do. But this is very difficult when they abuse you, put you in gas chamber, enslave you. Finding the tiny spark of goodness within others may be very difficult to find.
Oh, absolutely. No, that is true. And I think every class has a certain context to it. And we're talking about regular relationships over here. A separate question would be, what should be our attitude towards terrorists? What should be our attitude toward, that's a different discussion. And that's very complex. Because, are there certain people whose divine spark is in a comatose state? Yeah. I would like to believe that's by far the exception of the rule. And to most people, on the contrary, we have a far better chance of influencing them when we come from the perspective of, I really love you, and I think that, there might be certain areas in which you're seeing things from a wrong perspective, but we can still respect the godly spark inside of them. When they see you're coming from that perspective, it's easier to have an effect on them. And when someone sees you're coming from a perspective of hating them as a person, it's far harder to have a real effect on them. But I think let's try to, for me, the purpose of this, you take any class and you expand it too much and it ends up being meaningless. Let's talk about what's close to home over here. I think that will be easier. And these are people we know, difficult to get along with, but good people. And the respect and family and spouses, people in the community. And, I was coming home. Here's a silly example with a kid. I might have mentioned this before. Come home from work. You're so excited to see your kid. You just want to sweep him up, give him a big hug. And the kid, for some reason, says, it doesn't feel like it right now. Okay?
My great grandchildren.
And it's so hard, but I want to. But why do I want to right now?
Makes you feel
So
It makes me feel good, but respect would be right now. This is not what he or she wants. And that's where respect is a very difficult trait because it takes a lot of self-control, but it's so deep. It's so deep. And that's why even in Hebrew, it's interesting. Chesed means loving kindness. How do you say this restraint in Hebrew? Givura. What does gibor literally mean? Givura. What does the word literally mean? Strength. Why would the Kabbalistic trait that denotes this restraint also be the word for strength?
It's difficult.
What takes more inner strength often? Saying something or not saying something?
not saying.
See, it takes more inner strength. Doing something or not doing. Often it's the inaction, it's the not doing, because I respect you for who you are, and as a result, I'm not going to try to change you. That actually takes more strength. In the world, we hear a lot more about loving, but often it's the respect that's deeper, and boy, is it harder. Why? Because it takes a lot of humility. It takes a lot of humility to have that. Yes, Judy, and we'll go around here.
I think I heard a definition from Rabbi Manis Friedman
Mhm.
of, he said, how could you be commanded to love God? Well, what is love?
Mhm.
And he said that love is what's important to you is important to me. And I think that's respect. What's important to you is important to me. So I think it's both.
Well, when they're both the real definition of each other, then they'll go together. It's the superficial love
Yeah.
that is contrary to this respect, right? The superficial love, the infatuation, I guess you could say. But a real love goes together with real respect. Yeah. Any other? Yes.
I'm just wondering, is open-mindedness a tenet of the Jewish religion? I know it's a little different from what we're discussing, but you touched on it.
And I mean, Torah has certain perspectives through which you live life, and for someone that has a certain, there are certain positions that are Torah positions, and I'm passionate about it, but at the same time, I can recognize not everyone has that pair of glasses through which they live life. Okay, I can recognize the pair of glasses through which other people live life. I can certainly believe that imposing in a forceful way is not the best way to change or affect or inspire other people. That just doesn't work, right? So I don't think it's an open-mindedness of not having your own values. No, you can be very passionate about your own values, but you still leave room for someone else.
That's the respect.
Yeah, that's, and it doesn't mean that I don't even, and it doesn't even mean that in some way I want to rub off on other people in a positive way. I do, but it won't be in a way of imposing, it won't be in a way of imposing, forcing. That's not respecting,
I was
It
thinking.
would be by inspiring, by uplifting,
Educating.
educating. Yeah, these kinds of ideas. So, and I think that's really when I learned this subject, for me, that's one of the most meaningful ideas. There's no contradiction between having deeply held views about a particular issue and still being able to have a great conversation with someone who believes something very different without dismissing them as a person, which is so common today. You must be X, Y, and Z, if you believe that or have that.
To
Yeah.
that point, I think the biggest challenge would be to respect somebody that clearly doesn't respect you.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
true.
That's the
That's
biggest
what I
challenge.
was
Yeah.
thinking about.
Mhm,
I
mhm.
always rejected this, love somebody else, because love is so hard to
Yeah, yeah.
define, as we just realized, or try to. But do unto others as
Right.
you would have them do to you. That seems so much clearer to me.
Mhm.
I don't want to be treated with non-respect.
So then the question is, how do you respect someone who doesn't respect you? And that would open
That's
up a
what
whole
it is.
nother
Yeah.
discussion.
That's the biggest challenge.
Okay,
because
and
you
that-
can respect
correct.
somebody that doesn't agree with you. That's
Right.
relatively easy if you think about it. But when someone is clearly
not respecting
respecting
you,
how,
and
how
that
do you
Yeah.
overcome
I
that?
don't want to. I don't want to. That's not something to answer like this. That's something to think about together. But yeah, I would love the world to have a little bit more of this.
That's an important.
It is. It's an
But the
important
word
discussion.
has been, I'm going to swear, bastardized. It doesn't, that's
Yeah.
not love.
Yeah.
What we see is
Yeah.
different.
Yeah. All right. So we'll hold it over here. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Debbie, Ann, great to have you, and anyone else as part of the program. And a special thanks to Amnon Nissan, who makes this possible
Thank you.
weekend
Oh, yeah.
and week out. Deep appreciation for
I'm in
Nissan
the,
Communications for making this class
Yeah.
possible. Have a great week.
I'm in the course.
No,
I
no,
know
no.
everybody has
You're tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. Our weekly lineup of call-in programs includes Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, My Life, My Will with Gisela DiCarlo, The Tanya Love Show, Health In with Debbie Bruck, Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Triangle Be Well with Howard Jacobson, Lunch and Learn with Rabbi Yisrael Cutler, Lessons of Vietnam with NCVVI members, Parent Dome with Ryan Miller, Current Affairs with Amnon Nissan. And if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section on nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Atomos.com, makers of quality video recorders and converters, CarolinaApparel.com, and DeltaForce.net.